Hey, good afternoon. What is going on, guys? It's been a while since I've been able to put together a video, but I wanted to take some time today to address some things that I've been reading and researching on as I continue to put together writing and various different things related to educational policy and activism. Obviously, this is a very crucial time where we are right now, not only in our nation, but particularly in the state that I'm in, the state of Indiana. I know that this is probably true in a lot of different states, but our legislature has been working on a couple of different bills that have really brought out the big guns in the educational establishment. And I know that if I read correctly, in the last communication that I saw, the state teachers association here in Indiana, the ISTA, is planning on a rally down at the state house, I believe on Monday, if I saw right. And I didn't read through the article super closely, so I'm not 100% sure on that. But they are up in arms over some one bill in particular. I believe it's House Bill 1134. In this bill, there are calls for, and it's hard to tell really, because you read synopsis from them, they paint it in one way, then you read the language of the bill, and you kind of go, well, it doesn't really say that. So I don't know, what is being communicated in terms of what the bill will actually do, but what it revolves around is the idea of transparency. It's an attempt to create more transparency between people in the community, parents, obviously. They love to use the word stakeholders. Parents as stakeholders, being more aware of what is being taught and how it's being taught. So, in other words, what curriculum is being used, what textbooks are being used, what messages are the educators promoting in the classroom. And of course, this all stems from a variety of issues related to critical race theory and social emotional learning. Just to be transparent and clear, by the way, too, if you've kept up with me before in previous messages, my last video that I put together, as a matter of fact, I address this. I am not in favor of using the legislative mode for trying to create change on this. I've talked about that. I don't necessarily want to dive into that here today. But suffice to say, I think it's a fool's errand. I think it's a waste of time and resources to try to come up with a solution through the legislative agenda. Uh, be that as it may, I also don't agree with a lot of the communication that is coming out from the establishment, and continue to see teachers and teacher unions and various different groups that take to social media and continue to put together messages that are just flat out false. They're just not accurate to the scenario of what we're facing in education today. And the one thing that I've always tried to do in my writing, in my activism, whatever I'm trying to do, I'm always trying to engage people in conversations too, by the way, which seems to be an increasingly difficult thing to do because it just seems like dialogue will not be had because minds are closed and made up on various different things. And so, at any rate, one of the things that I see coming out of the establishment that I really wanted to kind of focus on in this video today, and I again see this in a number of different social media posts and just individual account posts as well, is this idea, as the video is entitled, that basically what they're saying is, hey, trust us, we are the experts, right? That is the message that is being communicated by our educators. And this goes back even to something that I saw a lot of in my time in the classroom and in schools. Teachers kind of have this feeling about themselves that they're not treated as professionals. They love to try to compare themselves to other vocations and say, oh, these people would never be treated like this. These people would never be treated like that. Yet here we are, drugged through the mud. We aren't treated with respect, and on it goes, right? And again, I don't want to get too much into that, per se here. But along those lines, I saw a pretty funny tweet exchange the other day, and this teacher was coming on, and somebody said, "Oh yeah, you can't, people think they can do what we can do, right? They think they can be teachers, and they can't. They don't have the ability to do it. They don't have the skills to do it." And this one in particular, I think she was a retired teacher. She was on there going, "Oh yeah, imagine if somebody went into their doctor and was telling them that they didn't know what they were doing and they didn't know how to treat them and on and on." And I'm sitting there going like, "Have you talked to a doctor lately? Because I'm willing to bet that if you do, you're probably going to say, hey, how many times do you get patients that come into your office that tell you, well, WebMD says that I have this." And my aunt, who used to date a chiropractor, says that I need to be doing this. Or my best friend works for this orthopedic surgeon and he says that I ought to be doing this, right? I'm sure this stuff happens all the time. Same thing with like mechanics. I think that was even brought up too. It's like, taking my car to the mechanic. I mean, my goodness, are you really that naive to think that people don't show up to their mechanic and try to self-diagnose what's wrong with the car? For goodness sakes, that's why you're there. You need to trust them to be able to do it. But yet, I'm sure there are people all the time that say, oh, I know what's wrong with it. It just needs this or just needs that. This is a human condition, and teachers aren't special, or above the fray for facing criticism from people. Sometimes valid, sometimes not. Let's be fair, right? I mean, we have to be fair that I'm sure there are sometimes people come in and are overly critical or step over lines and boundaries, and we don't want to see that. But holding people accountable, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. And as a stakeholder in this environment that we have of the way that our education system is set up, as backward as it is, I still, as a parent, regardless of my academic achievements, regardless of my socioeconomic status, regardless of my race, regardless of my gender, regardless of anything, you don't get to determine what role I have in my child's education. You can be upset about that all you want. And you can, go on about how you're the expert and I need to trust you. And that's again what I really want to kind of break that mantra down because it's dangerous, right? One, it breeds laziness, right? When you tell somebody to just trust you because you're the expert, it's like, oh, okay, then I don't need to be engaged because I'm just going to let you handle it. You know what you're doing. I'll just turn it over to you. Uh, but the results show that you don't know what you're doing. And that's on a micro and macro level, by the way. We've got almost 150 to 200 years worth now of data that shows us that the modern public school system is not producing the results that it should. And I mean, you can look across the nation. I mean, there was just a report that was released out of Baltimore. Baltimore always seems to come out with these things from time to time that showed the amount of students who couldn't read at grade level. Not only could they not read at grade level, they were reading sometimes 3 to 4 to 5 grades below where they were. How does that happen? And again, I know people in the system want to point the finger of blame at politicians who have created these standards, who have created standardized testing, who have created situations that are untenable to being able to teach children the material that they need. And I'll give you some of that because I've seen it. I know that's a part of it, but that's not all of it. And I would even argue it's not even a good chunk of the reason that we're getting the results that we're getting. I think that's the whipping post. I think that's the one that's easy for teachers who don't want to be honest with themselves and admit what the real problem is as to why we are failing to educate children. It's easy to point the finger of blame at a politician, and it's always easy to point the finger of blame at somebody else's politician, right? Your guy that you elected is doing yeoman's work, right? They're doing great. They're doing all they can to help create a better environment for our children and for our teachers. It's everybody else's politician who's screwing everything up. It's another thing too. So again, yes, I understand. I get standards, right? At a national level here, most recently it was Common Core. states that bucked that trend and said no, we're not going to do that. They did their own thing. It wasn't really any better. It was just they wanted to put their own language on it so they could say that they weren't going with what the federal government was doing. But in the end, though, it was pointless as well. But I want to kind of again really get at this because it irritates me when I hear this said, this idea of we're the experts. So the first thing I want to say is that's a problematic word, right? When you tell me that you're an expert, according to who? According to you? According to the state of Indiana or whatever state you're working in? According to your supervisor, your principal, administrator, whatever? Who gets to deem you as an expert? And what qualifies you to be labeled as a said expert? So that in and of itself is just problematic to define. In addition to that, even if I were to agree with you that you are an expert, that does not exempt you from being wrong on things, right? I mean, my goodness, look at the last 2 years of what we've been going through with COVID. All we have to do is look at that to know that experts can be wrong, right? So this notion and idea that even if you are, I'll say, competent, right? That doesn't mean that you're above the fray. That doesn't mean that you can't err and make mistakes. And by the way, too, that's not an indictment on you as an individual because you're part of a system that is flawed, right? So I know a lot of really, really good teachers. I know a lot of even more good people who are in education. Um, and that's one of the things too that I think needs to be acknowledged in this is when you say trust us, I'm not about to trust a group of people, right? I can trust an individual, but I'm not going to trust a blanket group of people because within that, if I intellectually acknowledge, oh, okay, I'm going to trust the teachers in my son's building just blanket, I'm going to trust them. They're the experts. They know what they're doing. They've been through a hiring process. They've been through background checks. They must know what they're doing. Um, we've had teachers in our school district that have been brought up on sexual harassment charges. That seems to be an issue. Um, I've heard stories of teachers who have mentally abused children in the building. Um, in my book, Failure, I write about this. According to a 2017 study conducted by the Children's Center for Psychiatry, Psychology, and Related Services, an estimated 4.5 million students grade 8 through 11 are victims of some sort of sexual, this is just sexual misconduct from an adult. Um, I mean, you've seen videos online. I don't have to go into more examples than this to say that mental, physical, emotional abuse from educators is happening every day across our country. So if you want me to buy into this trust us, we're the experts mantra, I have a hard time doing that. So I'm not going to buy into a group of people, uh, me trusting them. I can take each individual case and say, okay, I may trust that person, but I've got reservations about that person. That doesn't make me a bad parent, okay? That doesn't shouldn't make me come across as like I know more than you, okay? That's just me being concerned about my children, and I'm not hysterical. I'm not emotional. It's just the nature of things, right? When bad things happen and you know that they're happening, then your guard's going to go up. If you're a parent, you understand and know that. So, this idea of trust us, we're the experts, I'm not going to trust a group of people because I know that there are educators throughout this country. I've worked with some who have been on antidepressants while they're teaching, openly mocked and joked with their kids about being on their happy pills, maybe going through things that I don't know about or that my kids don't know about, and there's absolutely no way that you can separate those things when you bring them into the classroom. That's a real issue as well. So that certainly is one aspect of this. The thing that I find most disturbing, and as it relates to this idea of trust us, we're the experts related to content, because that's really what a lot of this, kind of is revolving around is, trust us on what to teach. We know how to teach. We have gone through school. We've been certified, licensed by the state to be able to do that. That doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't. Because again, I've been through a school of education. I know what that system is like. You don't learn how to teach in teacher colleges. You learn how to manage. You learn how to manage classrooms. You learn how to keep bad things from happening. And if you want to point the finger at blame as to why teachers are stressed out, that's probably a good place to start, is to say that they are woefully unprepared when they enter into the classroom. There's all kinds of data out there that showcase and talk about the amount of people who enter into the profession and quit within their first year to 2 to 3 years. Now, a lot of times once you get past that threshold, there's a greater likelihood because then you've learned how to adapt, you've learned how to play the game. And that's really all this is. It's learning how to get by without catastrophic things happening. And I know because, again, I've seen it. I've been in buildings where I've seen teachers skating by, wanting to get a number on their RISE rubric, wanting to please their administrator so that they can get a satisfactory rating and continue to keep their job. They just don't want anything really bad to happen. And that's what this is all about. When you look at, for example, and I've talked about this before, I believe in some other posts that I've done, but one of the things that I've really looked into here recently is, and I had heard this a number of years ago, when you graduate from a teacher college and you're applying for your license, you have to pass two praxis tests. The praxis one is on general education. The second one, at least, I can't speak for elementary ed. I don't know if their process is any different or what it looks like. But for secondary, which is what I'm licensed in, then you have to take a Praxis 2 test, which is geared toward content knowledge. Okay. And again, I want to kind of pause here and say, for me in particular, I'm social studies. Okay. The state of Indiana says I have to have 3 content areas within the umbrella of the social studies, which would include things like geography, US history, geography, world history, US history, economics, business, psych, soc. I'm sure there are some others, economics, if I didn't mention that one. And so those are kind of the thing. You have to have 3 content areas in which you are certified in. The reality is that you don't have enough opportunity in your coursework to become a quote unquote expert in those fields. And I know a lot of social studies teachers, and listen, myself included. Okay. I want to be very transparent and clear here. There's a lot of things that I don't know that that I've been asked to teach that I'm not an expert on, that I've had to go and do a lot of study on before I've put together the curriculum, the lesson plans, and so on to teach. Okay. Because again, the nature of going through a teacher college, you simply don't have enough time to be able to develop and understand, nor is it really even feasible to expect one person to be knowledgeable enough on world history, geography, US history, economics, government, social, psych, whatever. Okay. Maybe you could focus on one of those things and really drill in well enough to where you would know that, to be confident enough to be able to teach it in a way that you're, communicating enough for the students to get something out of it. Otherwise, listen, what are you doing? You're relying on pre-created canned lessons from websites. You're relying on a textbook. You're relying on something that the administration, if you're in a good enough position for them to be able to do this, to give you the materials that you need to just push the lessons out, go through the motions, right? Okay, we're on this, then we're going to this, then we're going to this, right? And it's formulaic, boom, boom, boom. I just want to get through it, okay? I know it's different in language arts and math, where those two in particular have been under the microscope because they've been so, key to standardized testing, in particular in the state of Indiana, iStep and iLearn. And so I can't speak to those because I'm not certified. I don't want to. I could guess as to what it's like talking to some of those teachers, but I don't want to overstep and say that I know when I don't. Okay, I can only speak to having taught in a social studies department and having taught, by the way, too, government, economics, US history, world history, geography. And so, again, there are many things within those disciplines that I have been woefully unprepared to teach, in particular, world history, because it was just something that wasn't on my radar when I was going through school. It wasn't something I was super passionate about. Spent a lot of my time studying early US history. And so, again, this idea of we are the experts, trust us. And, when you look at this, you see this come to fruition. By the way, when you look at here in the state of Indiana, you can find this on the state's DOE site. You can find it through a couple of other outlets too that have published reports on this more from a national perspective. They're starting to accumulate data on pass rates of the Praxis test. Okay. And so I want to kind of just read through some of the scores here that you can kind of see a little bit of what I'm talking about here. Now, again, this is from the state of Indiana. The last data that I could find on their website was from 2019 to 2020. And so here is the pass rate, okay, of a couple of different things. Middle school English language arts, 41% pass rate. Middle school mathematics, 50% pass rate. It was 43 the year before. Middle school science, which again, these are a little bit more like specific and probably sub parts of a fuller package of data. Because when you're certified as a teacher, you're certified, I think it's actually 5 through 12, I think is what I have on my license, but most buildings would be 6 through 12. 16% for science. 28% for social studies. If you go into high school, physics, let's see, that data shows 25% for the 2019-2020. Chemistry, a little bit higher, 67%. Earth space or science, Earth space science, 33%. And it goes on and on. Economics went from 55% to 82%. The sample size was a little bit lower on that 82% pass rate. There were only 11 people who took it that year. Let's see, here's the one that really stood out to me because this is probably one of the most common ones in social studies, historical perspectives, which allows you to teach U.S. history. 55% pass rate, 2019, 2020. By the way, those numbers that I was reading to you, those are best scores. Those aren't first attempts. So you can take the Praxis multiple times, and it will always take the best score from the time that you took it. So again, I have a real hard time buying into this "we're the experts, trust us" mantra when the data is showing me you can't even pass your content Praxis test, right? I mean, so clearly there's a problem there. Couple that with the fact that you're not prepared on how to properly teach. Teaching is a function. I love John Taylor Gatto, loved him. God rest his soul. This is a guy, I've talked about him in my writing and in my other videos. New York State Teacher of the Year, New York City Teacher of the Year, famously kind of woke up, realized what the system was doing to children as he looked around and he saw so much untapped talent just being wasted day after day, sitting in a classroom, going through lessons that they didn't want to go through, having no choice, but to face truancy issues and the law becoming an issue there. He says, teaching is a function, not a profession. Anybody with any knowledge, any skills to be able to communicate to somebody is a teacher. We have taken something that is very natural and organic. The process of teaching another person something doesn't require a fancy degree. It doesn't require a license from the state. It doesn't require professional development. It doesn't require that you have special certifications or add-ons to your license that make you quote unquote high ability or exceptional learners or whatever language you want to use. Education has been absolutely turned on its head by this mass one size fits all, compulsory, forced through the state to have to go through what they determine is a good course for education. You only have to look internally too, by the way, to see this. One of the great gripes of a lot of teachers, and myself included, I hated this my time in the classroom as well. But it showcases the idiocy of how the system is set up. Is every year there was constantly a new program being rolled out. Hey, this year we're gonna focus on Bloom's taxonomy and all your lesson plans. And when I walk in the room as administrator, I want to see Bloom's. Then it's something called Marzano. Then it's depth of knowledge, Webb's depth of knowledge. Then it's this, then it's that. And we're going to pay this guest speaker to come in and give PD, and we're going to work on how to build lesson plans this way. And I want to see this up on the board, and I want to see this happening, and do this, don't do that, right? On top of all of the other changes logistically that happen inside of schools. One-to-one now seems to be the great savior. Distance learning. I'm not knocking the idea of change. I think that's good in some ways, so long as it's moving in the right direction. But change for change's sake, which seems to be something that is very routine in our educational system, is frustrating. It's frustrating to the teachers. It's frustrating to the students because they know it too. They catch on to it. They're not ignorant to that. And so, it's like, oh, well, we're going to learn how to do Cornell notes, and oh, we're going to learn how to do Socratic seminars, and oh, we're going to learn how to do project-based learning, and oh, we're going to do this. And again, options are fine. I've got no problem with that. If you open up pathways for students, as a matter of fact, I applaud that. I think that should be more of the norm. And getting away from standardized learning is a good thing. I think we should keep going. I think we should break down the way in which the system is set up to where we force our students and our children to go into these buildings 180 some days a year, 8 hours a day, through 7 or 8 classes, and have to sit in desks in rows and listen to the same stuff each and every day, and knowing that the data shows they're going to forget it. They're going to forget it anyway. So what's the point? The point is, oh, you earned the credit. Why is that important? Well, because as I've talked about before, Dr. Brian Kaplan, right? He talks about this in his book, The Case Against Education. All education, the modern education system is a signaling mechanism in the market. How willing are you to jump through the hoops to show the market, the job market, that you could potentially be somebody that would be employable for a company? How much have you gone through the grind of getting the diploma? How much did you go through the process of obtaining education, post-secondary education, right? Each and every credit hour you earn, there's a direct correlation to the potential earnings that you could get throughout your working career. That's all it's become, right? So then why are we surprised when we get a class of citizens in our country that don't understand foundational issues like the way our government was set up, or what it means to be a citizen of the country, or why core basic math competencies are so important, even if you're not going to use it on a daily basis, right? Calculating a tip when you go out to a restaurant, or budgeting your income and your expenses, having an appreciation for the environment that you live in terms of science, right? That's not happening. We like to think it is, but it's not. Okay. And so we have to, if we're serious about this on both sides, as community members, parents, and educators, I beg with you, I plead with you to be open-minded, to open up and not see what is legitimate criticism, even if it's being expressed in the way that you don't agree with, to be at least open-minded to say, hey, this thing isn't working. This isn't right. And, yeah, again, I can point the finger of blame at politicians. Internally, I can and grumble and, go on about my administrator and the administration for the district and the path that we're choosing to go down and all this, that, and the other. The bottom line is it's systemic. That's what it is. It's systemic. We've got to move away from forced one size fits all schooling. And as long as you continue to be a part of that system, you're going to continue to get the results that you're getting, and it's not going to change anytime soon. So, again, I would love to have dialogue. I would love for somebody to reach out to me and tell me, give me a defense as to why you think this system is suitable for trying to educate our kids in this country today. I'm all ears. I would love for you, and I've seen people say, oh, well, it worked for me. Really? It worked for you. I've seen that. There's people on Twitter I engage with it. Well, the system worked for me. Okay, well, go tell the single mom who's working multiple jobs in Chicago, downtown Chicago, or Detroit, or Baltimore, or even here in Indianapolis, that the system worked for you when they are trying to do everything that they can to get their son or daughter out of that situation that they're in, being trapped in their local public school. And I, for the life of me, cannot figure out how some educators become so righteously indignant to think that because somebody is living in poverty, they don't have the tools and skills to be able to try to get out of that cycle of poverty. Your view of humanity is that low that you think because somebody is trapped in poverty that they need you, or that they need the government to come in and tell them this is what you really need. You don't know it, but this is what you really need. Go watch Waiting for Superman, right? Go talk to people. Go walk through the community and talk to people and find out just how much they know or don't know about what's best for them. I don't know. I certainly don't. As I sit here in my home, right? I can't tell you what's good for people living in downtown Indianapolis, but I know that the results that they're getting isn't working. And who am I to say, trust the system? Or, oh, you know what? If we just had a little bit more money, if we just got the rich people to pay more in taxes, if we just redistributed the money more fairly, that all of a sudden things would be better. That's condescending, right? That's absolutely condescending. Now, the last thing that I want to leave off with this, because this is also embedded into this we're the experts, and it's the role of schools. Okay, more and more I'm seeing educators that are embracing this idea that the school is a hospital, that the school is a psychiatric ward, that the school is the function and purpose of being a counselor to kids who have extremely difficult and poor home lives. That's reckless. That's dangerous. That is absolutely not the role of a school. Now, I know what you're going to say because it's been said to me. I've had teachers that have reached out to me and said, yeah, but these kids are showing up in our classroom every day. I get that. I understand that. I'm trying to get you to understand that it shouldn't be that way. Okay. But you can't continue to say, well, Johnny's facing physical abuse at home, mental abuse at home, mom, dad, drug abusers, they're in jail. They're bouncing around from home to home because they can't afford a place to live in. How do we expect Johnny to show up to class and learn? You don't. You don't. Johnny's got to get right first. He's not going to get right coming into your room, listening to you to go on about some idea or lesson or standard or whatever that has absolutely no bearing on his life right now. And by the way, you might agree with me on that. He also doesn't need you to try to play counselor. He also doesn't need you to try to fix him. You're an educator. Your license says that you're licensed to teach a subject, not to be a guidance counselor, not to be a psychologist, not to be a psychiatrist. This social emotional learning, and we need to turn rooms into cool down rooms and coloring rooms and all of these other things, learn the brain and all of this stuff. It's all an attempt to make yourself feel good. That's all it is. It's not going to move the needle. It's dangerous. And instead of continuing to take these kids who we know don't have any business being in a classroom right now with the condition that they're in, we need to offer opportunities for them to get healthy. That is not the role of the school. And I dare say it's not the role of any state agency either. Now, I know that there are agencies that exist, right? And I'm not saying that those are necessarily bad. I'm not saying that they don't do a good job in certain cases, right? But certainly through the school, no, that's not going to yield anything positive in the long run. It's all about ways to make yourself feel better, right? Because you know that you failed on teaching them concepts because we've seen the data. They're not reading, they don't know how to write, they don't know how to think critically, right? So, okay, well, then it's all because of their home life. So let's at least try to address that. Let's become friends with them. Let's talk with them. Let's try to make sure that we keep our ears open for things that we can report to Child Protective Services, right? Because that would never go wrong. There would never be any overreach of authority with that at all. So I really want to challenge our educators who are buying into this idea that the schools play a role of helping to diagnose issues that children are facing in their homes, to really think hard about opening up that Pandora's box. Because once you give a school the authority to start prying into home lives the way that they have, that will be abused. Will there be cases where kids will be saved and helped? Yes, absolutely. I think it can be done better and in other ways, but I guarantee you, much like other programs, it's going to lead to situations where I'm sure I discipline my children, and I'm sure that if somebody heard things that I have done to my children, that they would report me on that. And that's dangerous. That's really dangerous. As a state agency, you have no authority to dictate how a parent is raising their child. Now, if there is signs of physical, emotional, sexual, whatever abuse, right? That is beyond telling somebody, hey, you shouldn't talk to your kid that way, or you shouldn't punish them in that manner. Okay. But you don't think that won't be taken into account? It absolutely will, and I know it. I know it will because I know it's happened. I know people have already said that they've gotten calls from school because of phrases that were heard in the classroom. Hey, just checking. It's harmless. We're just checking to make sure everything's good at home, right? Little Johnny said this, or we heard Susie say that. Okay, it's just a matter of time. So that is very dangerous as well. So again, the point to all this, guys, and if you're in education, I've got a lot of friends who are still in education. Okay. I'm not attacking you individually. You're a part of a system that is promoting the things that aren't good for our children, for our society as a whole. And you can't be shocked when you see this kind of pushback coming from the community. And you can try to justify it as a small group of parents that are in the legislators' ears, but that does not change the fact that what is happening inside of our schools today is not working. And the longer that you try to promote this from changing and breaking down this system, the longer we're going to continue to get those results that we're getting. So at any rate, that's all I got for today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and the support. Don't forget to, by the way, my weekly podcast, if you're interested in hearing that, is called They Never Taught Me That. Each week, we go through material that gets excluded from curriculum, textbooks, whatnot, related mostly, obviously, to social studies topics. And so if you're curious and wanting to hear that or follow along with that, you can get all of our episodes on Google or Apple Podcasts. There's a Facebook fan page as well called They Never Taught Me That, where you can follow along over there as well. So thank you, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.